Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your front brake pads on a 2014 Hyundai Accent. So this is for a good friend of mine, and he's actually just recently replaced the brake pads. However, he was telling me it was making a little bit of noise. So I took off the other side and I noticed that there wasn't any brake grease or anything. He had forgotten to put that on, and I think that's what's going on, is a little bit of vibration from the pad between the shim and the caliper. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this one apart, show you how I would do the brakes on here, but I am going to put these pads right back on as they're really not worn down. So the first thing I would normally do is get a screwdriver in here and wedge it in between the pad and the body of the caliper, just to push that caliper piston back in. Now in this case, the caliper piston isn't really pushed out very far, so there's really not much movement, and that's okay. And that's also why I've also double checked the master cylinder. It's pretty much at the level it needs to be, but since we're not pushing that back in, no need to really worry about any fluid coming out. Now the next thing we need to do is loosen and remove these two caliper bolts right here, and that's a 14 millimeter. You can use a wrench or a socket. That's what those look like. We can set those aside and then carefully lift the caliper off. Just set that up here for right now. So now we're going to pull out the pads, but we are going to reuse these, so I want to be careful not to scuff up the surface too much. And you can see there's no grease or anything on here. I think that's all that this was, is just a little bit of vibration. Also in these little retainer shims or clips, I think that there was a little bit of noise happening in there as well. And we'll pull this one off here. Now here he's put the shim over the shim on the pad. It also looks like that probably, see, it's got these little pins here. Yeah, that wasn't completely locked in there. That's another part that was probably making a little bit of vibration. I don't know if you can see right there, that's probably what was making a little bit of noise as well. When applying the brake, it was probably pushing on here and hitting this in a weird way, making some noise. So since this pad already has this shim bonded here, there's really no need to put another shim on the outside, and try to stack that together. These little studs where this shim could sit, you'd have to really pound that on there to seat that, and it looks like that wasn't done. But again, these really aren't necessary in this case, since these pads do have a shim already bonded on here. Now since we have it apart, we're also going to grease up the slide pins and these pad retainer clips. It looks like we had a little bit of contact noise going on there as well. So what we'll do is we'll just make sure that we get some grease on the back of the pad, these little ears that slide in and out of there, just to make sure that it stays nice and quiet. But to do the slide pins, you just pull these out, kind of hold on to the boot and pull that out without taking out the boot. And they're pretty dirty, but they did have some grease, not completely dry. This is the grease I'm using. It's this AGS sil-glyde. It's like a silicone based grease. It works very well for brake parts and slide pins and all that. Tends to keep things nice and quiet, and also kind of keeps the rubber pliable. You can put a little bit on that boot as well. We'll just pop that back in. That feels a lot better. Same thing with the bottom one. Just pop that out, and you can see it's got some grease, but it is kind of dirty, a little bit contaminated by brake dust, so we'll get that cleaned up. And just a little bit of brake grease there. Probably should have some cleaner gloves on for this, but you get the idea. And then we can And we can pop that back in as well. Smear a little bit more grease on that boot just to keep that pliable. I'm going to wipe off that excess grease there too. Just make sure you don't get grease on the surface of the rotor. If you do, clean it off. So before we put this brake pad back on, we'll get a couple globs of this brake grease on here and just kind of spread that thin. Just make sure you get plenty on those ends, or these little ears where they slide in and out of those pad retainers. So that's enough on there. We can carefully put that back in. Just kind of line it up with those retainers and push it on. Now same thing for the outer pad. And you can even see a little bit of scuffing that was happening here. It's kind of scuffed up from the outside of the caliper bracket, so it just needed a little bit of grease to be able to ride smoothly in there. Probably is going to eliminate a lot of that vibration that was happening there, which is what causes that noise. Same thing, just make sure we get a good amount on the ends here as well. And put that one back in as well. Now usually when I have the brake caliper off, I'll take a look at the boot just to make sure it's not damaged or binding up or anything. And this one actually looks like it's in pretty good shape, but lately I've been putting a little bit of this grease on that boot. Seems to keep it pliable and prevents cracking. Also kind of just helps it so it doesn't bind up in there. Just really doesn't take much, just a little bit of grease kind of spread around there, and then I'm just kind of wiping away the excess there as well. And then we can put our caliper back on. Just sometimes you have to pull on those slide pins, but we're okay here. And then we can put our caliper, these little caliper bolts, back in place. And we can just tighten those up to spec. You'll notice on the slide pin here, these can spin while you're trying to tighten that, so you may need to put an open-end wrench on there as well. But these ones are doing all right. So double check your manual on the torque spec here, but it's probably right around 25 foot-pounds if I had to guess. If I get a chance to look that up, I'll put that in the description or maybe right up here at the top. And you're done. Just remember to tighten up everything per spec, and go ahead and step on the brake pedal once or twice to push those caliper pistons back out, pushing the pads up against the rotor where they need to be. It's a good idea to double check the brake fluid level in your master cylinder as well before you drive off. I hope you liked the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. I will put a link in the description to my website where you can buy that brake grease on Amazon and a few other products as well. But thanks so much for watching, and good luck.